Greetings and welcome to the Insight School of Oklahoma, ISOK, and Oklahoma Virtual Charter Academy, OVCA, Stride 100% Virtual Charter Schools, Transition Parent Night. My name is Rosalind Martin. I'm the Transition Coordinator for both schools, and it is my privilege and pleasure to look at how our two villages intend to transition our children, our students with disabilities, so that they can achieve successful, viable post-secondary adult life experiences. I want us to take a moment to view some startling statistics, understand why transition is so important, and then we'll continue with our presenters. I will introduce them as they are engaged with us, and I will also share a little introduction of our production team a bit later on. At this time, though, we want to jump right into the importance of transition services and post-secondary outcomes excellence for students with disabilities. There we go. And you know what? We're still going to end on time. Okay. So
yes, it all looks good now.
Okay. I was explaining that the reason for this meeting is because we've learned that there's a lot that's not happening great for our students with disabilities, especially those students with developmental disabilities. We have made it possible for our students and participants with hearing disabilities or deaf to participate in this meeting by virtue of live transcription. I would like for you to know that you can click next to recording and open the live transcription and then select show subtitles. And that will permit you to participate by seeing what we are saying. We also have muted everyone as they come in because we would like to maintain the type of volume clarity that will allow our visually disabled participants to hear. To participate, however, all you have to do is just click on that red microphone icon, and it will allow you to speak, ask questions, share insights, and so forth. We want it to be interactive. With that said, I want to go back and point out a couple of other things, and then we're going to get right into chatting with Mr. McGirt. Special education, a lot of folks don't realize, is the law. And transition is the essence of that law. Transition, preparing students with disabilities to become viable, contributing members of the community. That's the law. And I think it's amazing that back in 1995, the Congress at that time acknowledged that disabilities are reality. We all have our unique components to make us who we are. One of the aspects of that law is the Indicator 13, which says that starting at age 16 and older, we're supposed to be intentional in the education system about preparing students for post-secondary life. And it's supposed to be based on what they want. We're supposed to be completing assessments to find out what students with disabilities want so that we can properly program in addition to those core subjects to prepare them for graduation. Now, what a lot of us don't know is that Indicator 14 says that a year after they graduate, we're supposed to be telling you where they're at. We're supposed to be reaching out to them And we're supposed to be knowing that either they're in college or they're gainfully employed. That's the expectation a year later. Now, one of the things, and I'm not sure you can see all of it, the tragedy about what's happening, sexual abuse is rampant amongst individuals with disabilities, especially those with intellectual disabilities, and incarceration is also rampant. And if you look down kind of toward the next to the last line, and it breaks my heart because I have to admit, I wasn't taking transition as intentionally as I should have. And what we're learning is that 1/4 of the prison population, it's a large number, were in special education. And so that's the reason why I invited Mr. McGirt to join us, to present with us this evening, because his experience helps us to understand how we can get out of this and reverse the pattern so that our children, those with disabilities, can be successful. And so with that, I am going to stop sharing. And I am going to ask if we could highlight, and that might be my screen. Great. And Mr. McGirt is here. And if you could kind of have us share the spotlight, Ms. Irvin, so we can kind of do it like a back and forth speaker and guest.
Okay. I will try my best to get that figured out. Hang on one second.
Thank you so much. While she's doing that, Mr. McGirt's name says Edmund Foster, and I want to thank Mr. Foster. He's a retiree from the telephone company, and he's actually the Voice of Hope Seventh-day Adventist Church Sabbath School superintendent who has a studio, and he made it possible for Mr. McGirt to step into the 21st century with technology. They usually run a weekly Facebook commentary program together. And so Mr. Foster, graciously agreed to have Mr. McGirt come over. Of course, Mr. McGirt said, "You've got to fix me dinner," because Mr. Foster loves to cook. So we want to welcome you this evening, Mr. McGirt. I, by the way, shared with our family and our participants that they could ask questions. And so we've got some, and I will be honest and tell you that I did reach out to Mr. McGirt and ask him if it would be okay if I brought these questions up, because even though it's 25 years later, this was something that has still riveted and affected the Oklahoma City area and the United States of America. Not being from, I'm just going to tell you this a little bit, and then I promise I'll turn it over to Mr. McGirt. Not being from Oklahoma, you know, this was something that I kind of heard about, kind of like the Pentagon and the World Trade Center. But, you know, it was just kind of something that I'd heard about. And back in April, I was actually participating in a Wednesday night prayer meeting. And that's one of the resources that our families have available. And I heard this young man speak about, because they were celebrating, you know, just praying together and remembering family and friends and so forth. And he shared something about his daughter. And as someone that works with parents and children and all of those great things, I kind of thought to myself, wow, that's really deep. So I'm hoping, and I'm going to stop running my mouth so that hopefully we'll have time for him to share that this evening. Mr. McGirt, I'm going to begin with the first question, but first I want to ask you, how are you doing? You doing okay?
Doing fine.
Welcome, welcome. I also want to tell y'all just real quickly, Mr. McGirt is a survivor of the Vietnam era. And he actually was a participant on the helicopters that brought out the wounded. Am I saying that correctly?
Yes, correct.
So this man is truly a survivor. Now, so let's jump right in. Question number one, I'm going to go ahead and ask it. Would you recount for us, please, the events of that morning?
Thank you, Dr. Martin. Yes, that morning I got to work that morning. It's such a beautiful day. The sun was shining and just really a gorgeous day. And me and some of my coworkers, we would walk on our lunch break sometime. We'd walk in the tunnel downstairs, but this day we said we would walk outside. But also I worked in the, I was what's considered as a multifamily asset manager, and which is anything, any unit of housing that's over one. Could be an apartment complex, a duplex, or whatever. But anyway, that morning I had a financial statement on one of my properties that I needed to get out. Plus I was scheduled for computer training. We had some changes coming into the office. As you know, on most jobs, it's the constant changes and you have to train to adapt to those changes. And that morning I left. I told my supervisor I had this financial statement to get out. And she said, well, you can maybe make up the training later on. And she left and went to another federal building. And so about 5 minutes to 9, I decided that I would go up and do the training. Mm-hmm. And I encouraged a coworker of mine, a young man there, to go with me, because we got upstairs, went up on the elevator. So we got off the elevator. He said, I'm going into the restroom and I'll be right back, right out. I said, okay. So I went in and sat down with the other group. We had 5 people from our legal staff that were scheduled for this training, and they were running late. And needless to say, they didn't make it.
So you go up to this training, and I thought, wow, how remarkable that post-secondary continuing education, because that's one of the things that we're trying to motivate our students to consider. And I wanted the group to know that of those few who do go on and enroll in post-secondary education, the majority do not make it through the end of that first semester. And so here you're telling us that you're on a job and you're still involved with post-secondary education. So I thought, what a key point for our transition emphasis. So you're up there and you're ready for training. And do you mind telling us what happened after the explosion?
Okay, and also with the training, I did some training on my own, which helped me in the field that I worked in. But as I said, we were getting ready for the training. So we had 5 people from our legal staff that we were waiting for. So the instructor, she said at 9:02, she said, we don't have time to wait. We've got a lot to cover. She said, turn your computers on. And at exactly 9:02, I punched my computer button. The explosion happened. And of course, I'm thinking my computer didn't blew up, but then I saw I could see through the smoke and everything. I could see the outside sky. So I knew there's something. And then I heard people screaming, and there were, I think, 5 of us left upstairs there. So I said, come on, y'all, we got to get out of here before this part falls in. So anyway, we had to crawl over debris and got into the hallway there. And the young man that had went in the restroom, he was coming out. He was dazed because he didn't know what had happened either. So we all went to the back stairwell. The majority of the steps were still intact. So we were able to get down. We got down to the 7th floor, and we had to jump down to the next 6th floor. And so there was one lady there with her high heels on. And she was sitting there. We got down and we said, come on. Her name was Jane. And she said, I can't jump. I got these heels on. I said, well, take them off and come on. So she did. And she got down. And so she jumped down. And of course, 3 or 4 of us caught her. And we made it down the 3rd floor. We had a canteen on the 3rd floor, which was operated by a young blind fellow. And he had came out into the stairwell there. He was wandering around. He didn't know what was going on, and of course, unable to see anything. So I grabbed him I said, Al, come on, Al. So I grabbed him by the arm and led him down the rest of the steps until we got out in the back portion of the building, out on the patio. And then we walked around to the front of the building. I thought at first when the explosion happened, it was like a gas leak. But when I saw the front of the building, I knew what had happened. And I said, well, we need to try to see if we can help somebody. And this one guy said, yeah, come on, y'all, everybody, let's go. And we started into the building. And about that time, someone hollered out, said, there's another bomb. So, of course, we all scattered and ran as far away from the building as we could. Because there wasn't. But by that time, of course, the firemen had arrived and they started going in rescuing people. And when I saw them bring a child out, little boy, he couldn't have been no more than about 2 or 3 years old. I thought about my grandchild, and I just couldn't go in. I couldn't.
Let me ask you a question, and we appreciate, because another aspect of your story that I found so remarkable was we talked about working with individuals who are disabled and moving them into employment. And here you actually participated in partnership, community, because that's something else we talk about in transition. Community, participating together. I didn't hear you say people were screaming and running and not willing to cooperate. You were working together as a team. And I think that is so fantastic. And then the fact that you were able to contribute to the success of a blind colleague in that hallway. Again, all of this experience is so meaningful for those of us who are looking to engage in transition of children. The other question that we were asked was, I put down that you were a former employee of HUD, and we were asked the question, did that mean that you did not return? And I'm going to let you answer that question, please.
No, I returned. Of course, we were without an office for about 6 months. And but we got our paycheck every 2 weeks as normal. And then that fall, I guess it was like about October, they had found a new location for us down on Main Street, about 6, 7 blocks away from where we had been, the Merle building had been. And that's where I resided until July of 1997, which was 2 years later. And I retired from there then.
So you went back, I'm sorry, go ahead.
But I went back to work, and it was not easy because there were so many people that we had lost, HUD lost. Of course, we were the largest agency in the building, and we lost the most people. And for those that returned, there were within the next year, by the next April of the next year, we had had 2 suicides. And the second year, we had another one that.
When you spoke with us, I'm sorry, I keep cutting.
But I said, now I'll be honest with you. When I went home, committing suicide never entered my mind, never even thought that way. But there were nights when I went to bed, I didn't care whether I woke up the next morning. And I'm telling you what, I was sitting there 3 days after the bombing, before they did the implosion of the building. I was sitting there one night watching TV, and it was about 12:30. And it became so unreal that I got in my vehicle and drove downtown to make sure it really happened. That's how disoriented or unbelieving, whatever, that's how I was.
What I think is remarkable about your story is because I keep hearing so much of what we're going through now, and I don't want to minimize the significance of how strange what you experienced was, but I'm thinking about how hopeless and disoriented, and what a tragedy for so many of us that are now facing the pandemic, but we can't give up. We've got to continue. I want to share something with you all before I have Mr. McGirt tell you if he's willing about the children or about his daughter. But I want to point something out. It's graphic, so I'm hoping that you want to turn your eyes away. You can. I have discussed this with Mr. McGirt, and I wanted you to see this because I want you to hear the remarkable aspect of the story, because there's hope. There's hope. We can come through. And that's what I want us. That's why I'm just so eager to make sure that we become very proactive with transition. Mr. McGirt, would you, before we end, I don't see where there are any questions, so I'm going to ask you, would you mind sharing with us what you shared that Wednesday night with the group Impaired prayer meeting about your daughter?
Okay, as I speak, remember those cars that were burning there across the building, the street from the Merle building. My daughter, who was staying with us at the time with her 6-month-old son, her husband was in the Air Force and he had left for some training out of state. And so he drove their vehicle. It's not like, today families have 2 and 3 vehicles. Well, they only had one. But anyway, my daughter she would take me to work a lot of times and keep my vehicle and pick me up when I'd get off. But this day she didn't. And unbeknown to me, she had applied for a job at the Small Business Administration in the federal building. And they called her, asking her if she could come down for an interview at 9 o'clock. And she said yes. So she called her girlfriend and asked her if she could take her down there and maybe sit over in that parking lot and watch her son while she went in for an interview. Her friend said, oh, yes. She said, I'll be glad to. Well, anyway, about 15 minutes later, her girlfriend called back and she said, Nicole, you'll never guess what happened. She said, I went outside. Not only did I have 1 flat tire, I had 2. But the elderly gentleman next door came out and he told her that he would try to see about helping her getting a plants fixed. So she asked called my daughter and she said, could you call and see if you can go in later on for the interview, which my daughter did. And they told us that whatever time you get here, just come on in and let the receptionist know that you're here. So she started getting ready. But about that time, her other friend called and told her, was she watching TV? She said, no. She said, well, look, turn the TV on. She said, that's the building your dad worked in. And of course, as we all know, it was all over the news. So she turned on and she saw it. And my daughter said she just sat down and she started crying.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. That's all right.
The thing that, again, I think is so remarkable about what happened with your daughter is that, as you mentioned, the friend was going to babysit her son in the parking lot across the street, 2 flat tires. And I think about how often we go through things and we think, oh, why does this have to happen to me? Why does this have to happen to me? And you know what? You find out after the fact that it could be a blessing in disguise.
Blessing in disguise, right. And that truly was. My daughter, for 20 years, my daughter would not come down, go downtown. And she just went downtown here. Well, I guess about 3 or 4 years ago. So a job that she has required her to go down to do something down at the federal building.
Well, I'm sorry.
That's all right. Go ahead.
When you pause, I think you're done. So
Yeah,
I apologize for cutting you off. I want to thank you so much for sharing with us, because again, every step of what you went through has significance for us in transition. And I'm hoping that we can stay motivated as you did, and we can continue to put forth our best effort and not to be discouraged to the point where we stop. Do you have any closing comments for us, since we don't have any questions? Any closing comments? Anything you'd like to share?
Dr. Martin, I would like to thank you for asking me to do this. it's not easy even after 25 years. And you be talking and you say something, then something else come back to your memory, you know. It's something you could talk about all night, but I think I've said enough, but I do appreciate it. And I hope those that are listening have gotten something from it and that it will have a great effect on your lives.
Let me share with you. Let me share with you some of the chat we're hearing is thank you so much for sharing your story with us. Thank you for sharing your story with us. It's inspiring and very brave. I'm going to allow you, like I'm your teacher, to go ahead and log off. I know you've got to get back home while it's still manageable traffic. Thank you, Mr. Foster, for facilitating this meeting. And Ms. Irvin, if you would like to go ahead and spotlight me, Mr. Foster and Mr. McGirt. Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
I see Cassie McQuilling is here, and she is our own, aren't we just excited, pre-ETS specialist. She is assigned to work with OVCA and Insight School of Oklahoma. And I want to pause long enough to say thank you to Shauna Irvin. She is, again, the Community Family Advisor Lead. She's also our Learning Coach Academy Manager and Coordinator. And also with us this afternoon is my Commander-in-Chief, Nicole Price. I'm just thrilled to have him with me, along with the rest of my parents, co-workers, colleagues, and we're thrilled to be planning great things for transition. And Miss McQuilling, they have been on pins and needles waiting to hear you explain what in the world makes pre-ETS different from VR. Why?
All right. Well, hello, everybody. I am Cassie McQuilling. I work for the University of Oklahoma in the Pre-Employment Transition Services program. So we are a program funded by DRS, and we work in collaboration with DRS, but we are not VR counselors. I am not a VR counselor. Pre-ETS, Pre-Employment Transition Services, is an education program that gets individuals with disabilities ready to get a job. We're teaching anything relating to interviewing, to self-advocacy, to creating a resume, and looking at those post-secondary learning opportunities and getting the individuals ready for what comes next. So we work with anybody between the ages of 14 and 22. So cuts off on their 22nd birthday. And we're doing everything that we can to prepare them for whatever job it is that they are interested in, and really working individually with students, especially with your students. I work one-on-one with everyone. And so I think I have about 15 ISOK OVCA students on my caseload right now that I work with individually, about 45 minutes per, and I meet with on a monthly basis. So we teach in 5. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go on. We teach what? Everybody takes a breath and I jump right in because I'm ready to ask more questions. No, go ahead, continue.
Okay, so I was just going to say we teach in 5 core areas. So the first being self-advocacy. That can be anything from how to speak up for yourself and understanding your disability. That could be how to be included in your IEP meeting. That could be creating a 1-page profile to introduce yourself in social situations, things like that. We also teach in job exploration, so taking career assessments, figuring out what it is that I'm interested in getting a job in. Work-based learning, that is our third one. That can be anything from doing tasks itself. So it's difficult in a virtual setting, but I'm doing a lot of things online where, like, I will share my screen and the students can be interactive and write on the whiteboard and things like that. But with work-based learning, that's where the students getting an opportunity to see what is available out there and what a day in the life of a veterinarian would look like, for example. So I do a lot of YouTube videos in this area where students can kind of job shadow and see what kiddos or what adults in that job field is doing. And then also working with the student and what their what their abilities are. So if a student might have higher support needs, then we could mail them supplies to help them work on something that's more catered towards their interest. So if they're interested in getting a job in, say, sorting mail, I'm going to send them tasks that gets them prepared for sorting, things like that. I haven't had the opportunity to do that yet. I haven't had a student like that on my caseload, but that is something that I'm capable of doing. Two other areas in which we teach. One is post-secondary education, exploring those options, looking at FAFSA, helping individuals apply for college or VOTEC, if that is something that they're interested in, doing a lot of research. I work very much in the research field with those kiddos. And then lastly, workplace readiness. So that's all of the skills leading up towards getting a job. So that's creating your resume, making sure you're doing your hygiene, looking professional at work. A lot of things kind of fall into that area.
I wanted to wait long enough because my jumping in is just.
I was giving you a pause.
So you said 14. I misunderstood. I thought it was 15 and a half, but that's VR. So you'll start working with them in 7th grade then?
7th grade if they're 14, yes. Their 14th birthday is when they qualify for pre-ET services. And pre-ETS is, like I said, it's a collaboration with DRS. They do not have to have a VR caseload open. They just have to, they can be anybody who is potentially eligible for VR services.
Now, I understand that you will also go into classrooms and work alongside with teachers. Will you do that with virtual teachers?
I can go into virtual classrooms if I'm invited. Absolutely.
And can you tell us just real quick, and I know it was just a meet and greet with you, and we'll be doing some other things where you are going to be the key, but when you go into classrooms, what do you usually do? Why are you invited in?
So just like I work with ISOK and OVCA students once a month individually, that's how I work with in-person schools as well. So I go into teachers' classrooms. In this case, we'd be talking virtually. I would go into a classroom and I'd teach the exact same thing that I'm teaching individually, but in a group setting. So that way you get more feedback, you get more ideas. There's a lot of sharing involved, and it can sometimes help to stimulate dialogue.
So do all of the students then that you meet with have to be pre-ET students if you go into a classroom?
They should have a permission slip, but they don't have to be VR students.
Okay. Do we have any questions before we introduce and turn the program over to VR? I just wanted everybody to just kind of have an opportunity to see Ms. McQuilling, Cassie's face, and recognize that pre-ETs can really help. Our students often come with, this is what they want to do. This is the job they want to work. And what Cassie will do is help them to really explore that, to see if they really, in fact, do want to be involved with that. And then I've been talking with Ms. Goldson, Cassie's supervisor, about the possibility of our students tagging along with some of the job coaching, job shadowing, community activities. If something's going on in their general area, could we be made aware of it so that our kids can tag along? And I understand that the caveat is that they have a guardian, someone that's with them that's accountable for their well-being, but we can tag along. So we'll be talking more about that. If we have no questions for Cassie, we want to thank her for joining us at the last minute and sharing with us about pre-ETs. And I'm pretty sure that you'll be hearing from our case managers that will be, because we have learning strategies classes and modeling classes and program opportunities that we think for sure our students will benefit from.
Wonderful.
I see
Thank you for letting me share.
I'm getting a lot of thank yous. Okay, I'm sorry.
No, I just said thank you for letting me share. I appreciate being invited tonight.
You're welcome. And at this time, we're going to invite to the stage Miss Renee Sansom Briscoe. She's such a generous and loving spirit. She's always sending us our Wednesday whimsical, something to laugh about, something to open our eyes about, something to be amazed by. And so I'm thrilled to have her. She is the vocational rehabilitation coordinator for the state of, I'm probably not saying her title right, for the state of Oklahoma, a part of the Oklahoma Department of Rehabilitative Services, vocational rehabilitation. And I wanted to invite her, and I know that a lot of you are here because she's on the platform, because we really want to understand everything we need to know about what VR does to help our students and how we can collaborate with them, because we're not having a real good success rate. We're making some referrals, but we're not getting a lot of our students in the door. And so we want to have a chance to talk with Mrs. Briscoe, and have us share with her what all things VR. And I want to share something just real quickly. I'm going to interject because I want Ms. Briscoe to know that we have information available, and part of what we're going to be giving away, I'll be getting the link out here for us shortly, is we do have a list, and let me just open that for you all just really quickly, and I'll come back to Ms. Briscoe. And as you can see, I took and I shared with Ms. Briscoe that I was going to be doing that also. The PowerPoints from the annual Oklahoma Transition Institute that were relevant for our parents, and I'm going to charge our parents to please open 1 or 2 a week, because this is what changed my whole attitude and approach about how exciting and thrilling the opportunities are. And so these various presentations, yes, it's possible to go to college, even if you have an intellectual disability or a disability. And I added all of the college disability offices. All of our colleges have disability offices that are there to help. Unified sports, guardianship and conservatorship, ICAP, and what all these things mean. You now have all of this available for your background and your knowledge. For our Native American students, there's tribal VR specialist. There's specialization, as you can see, healthy dating and relationship. Transition 101. What in the world are we talking about with that word? And so we have the resources so that when Ms. Briscoe touches on them, you all will know that you're not expected to memorize and go forth from this meeting perfect. We've got the resources for you. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Ms. Briscoe to share, and I'm going to be quiet. I'm not going to interrupt.
Thank you, Roz, for having me. This is a passion of mine, so I enjoy any time I can talk about DRS. Just a little bit, I was a counselor before I became the transition coordinator. So I've been with the agency 17 years, and I was a counselor for 13 of those years, probably. So I have the experience of the VR counselor background working with students. And then, of course, as a transition coordinator for DRS, I have a lot of work behind me now with dealing, working with transition age youth. So I'm very excited about working with that population. And I just kind of want to touch on a few things. I do not have a PowerPoint that I'm sharing or anything, just because PowerPoints get so, overwhelming and can only do it so many times. But so I did want to talk a little bit about what DRS services, what are DRS transition services? So I don't know if anyone knows, but we have a SBVI also. So we have VR, which is vocational rehabilitation, and we have SBVI, which is services for the blind and visually impaired. So we have 2 divisions, if you will, and then we serve clients based on their ability to per their disability. So, and then we also have a deaf and hard of hearing unit, specializes just in deaf and hard of hearing, and then we have a Hispanic unit that specializes in working with Hispanic population. So why is this so? VR transition youth services help students, people is what I was going to say, but students with disabilities train for a job, continue their education, and find jobs after high school. That's our main goal is employment. At DRS, our main goal is employment. Under this program, every youth has the opportunity to participate and be a part of sponsored career counseling, work readiness trainings, and fully integrated work experiences in the community. These services are delivered while in high school. And I know there was a confusing conversation a minute ago about DRS working with us at 15 and a half. The Department of Rehabilitation Services, you can absolutely apply for services at 15 and a half. The pre-employment transition services begin at 14. And we are hoping by the time that they do apply that they have gained some of these skills so that they're ready to just go to work or go to educational, do something with education beyond like post-secondary. So I did want to know that it's very confusing. We several years ago, maybe 5-6 years ago, they demanded or they came up with the mandate that we will serve clients age 15 and a half here in Oklahoma. That varies across the nation. We are looking into decreasing that because we are able to serve 14-year-olds with the pre-employment transition services, but they're receiving services, nothing that they're having to get services paid for. When you become a DRS client, those services are generally something that has to be, quote, paid for. Schoolwork study, work adjustment training, any of the work experiences. Sometimes that could cost money, uniforms, training, any of those things. That is the purpose behind DRS taking application at 15 and a half. A problem that we come across most generally in every school, not just this one or any other, is a referral to a counselor or even a PREETS is not an application. The referral is simply a referral form that gets sent to the counselor. In turn, the counselor sends a letter to the parents. The parents respond. Do you want to have a case? Yes or no? They respond with that, and then an application starts. So I'm going to say it. I say it all the time. If you have a student that you've already done an IEP with, the parents are on board, take that application to your IEP. Let those parents fill it out right there. Send the referral with the application and the IEP to the counselor all at the same time. That lessens the confusion of, well, did you get your application? And sometimes, I'm just being honest, after being a counselor for 13 years, sometimes parents get so overwhelmed and they get a packet that says, it's a large packet and it says Department of Rehabilitation Services. They chunk it in the mail because they're like, I don't want any part of this. Or my child doesn't have, nothing wrong with him. He's not addicted to drugs or any kind of thing. That's seriously the answers we get. So take time to help the parents fill that application out. Cassie is also available to help clients fill out an application. Anyone can complete an application. Now, I will say right now there's a 2-page app. It's not the full app. It just gets the one that's sent in to get kind of the process started. We are looking at expanding it again just a little bit just because the needed information is not getting captured. So I do want to make that very clear while I'm here talking today. So transition services is just a coordinated set of activities, okay, for a child with a disability, designed to focus on improving their academics and functional achievement for that child, moving in to post-school activities, okay? The IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, mandates transition services by the 9th grade or turning 16. That is where that comes to play with DRS and IDEA here in Oklahoma. Every state could look different. So you may know somebody, and I'm just saying Michigan, I don't know. You may know somebody there that's like, well, my son's getting, DRS service 14. Well, that's a state decision that that I had no part of. So I don't know that. We also, something else that doesn't normally get much attention is the fact that a student can be on a Section 504 plan and still get DRS services. They don't just have to have an IEP. That's a common misconception when it comes to DRS services. I do not understand it, but that's just the way it is. Any student that can document a disability, and when I say document a disability, it doesn't mean that they bring in a letterhead for mom that says Joseph has autism. No, it has to be from a doctor's office or psychologist or somewhere stating their disability. That is how we are serving pre-employment, the pre-ETS students potentially eligible, is this documented disability, okay? WIOA, which is the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, came out in 2014. And we as a state we've been doing it, but we're just really getting into the meat of how does it work. So for DRS is that we have to spend 15% of our transition, we have to spend 15% of our budget on transition age youth from 14 to 21. So if you have any ideas of how we could spend some money, let me know. We don't normally hear that, so please let me know. Cassie talked about pre-ETS. I don't need to really go into that. I am available for questions, afterwards, or if you want to talk separately, I'm available. We also have schoolwork study and work adjustment training. Schoolwork study is where a student goes to work in the school and they get paid to work. Now, it looks a little different when you have online presence. We do have a schoolwork study with Epic. It's very new. We're just kind of learning through that. It is something that can be done. It's like Epic has like a administrative building. So some of their students are actually working there. But it also can be that the student is working in the community, which is what we want. We want these students to get experiences that anyone else can have on their own, right? So how that works is the school pays the student the $7.25 an hour. They can only work 15 hours a week, that kind of thing. They can get credits, things like that. And then the school pays them and the DRS reimburses the school. So really, it's a free service to the school. The only thing they're out money at first is that first paycheck, which it can it's not more than usually $90 or so. But that's an opportunity. Work adjustment training is another opportunity that I really like it. Our students, we have contracts with different vendors. A vendor is someone who provides services that contracts with DRS. So like Dell Rogers, for example, Goodwill Industries, for example. They come to the school and they pick up the student and take them back to their facility, and they do work type things, pre-ETS type stuff in those facilities, like one day a week. And then the other days, it might be two. Things are different with COVID. So, and then the other days they're going out in the community and they're working at Kohl's or, Denny's. I can't remember all the places that they go, and they change it up. So they're getting experiences, but it's not something that we are paying the student for. Okay. We are reimbursing the job coaching piece. So these students are more significantly disabled and they're going to need a job coach. Schoolwork study, you don't need a job coach. That's for someone who can work independently, maybe with, some supervision, obviously, but work adjustment training is for those who require job coaches. We do have many summer programs. And I say it's the same summer program, but there's many availabilities. Next year, we're doing what's called Best Step, and that's Building Employment Skills for Today, Summer Transition Employment Program. Best is 1 week of learning instruction on how to work, what do you wear to work, hygiene, interviewing skills, resume writing, talking about different agencies, workforce, DRS, Dell Rogers, like all these people come in and talk about what it's like to go to work. And then the next 3 to 4 weeks, they're going to spend working in the community. And GALT, who is an agency that employs people with disabilities, pays their wages, and DRS will reimburse them for that. It's a very exciting opportunity. We've started planning already. We are likely to have 25 locations next summer, which makes my heart like explode because it seems like a lot, but we really want to be able to, do more. We have pre-ets now that can help. We have counselors, we have techs, we have my staff, we have a lot of people, a lot of different agencies that want to help. So this is super exciting. We also have STEM camp, which is science, technology, engineering, and math. That is a fun thing. It's where, you go and it's 3 days, and when it's in person, lunch is provided those days, and you make t-shirts and mouse pads and necklaces and bracelets, and you design cars and you race them. And it's like STEM is the fun. It's so fun. And it's associated with Tech Now, which Tech Now is an agency, or it's its own company. And Rick and Sherry DeRenault have that company, and they turn that into a STEM camp during the summer. But it's a program in schools throughout the year for students with disabilities. Can also be an elective credit and is also available for OK Promise. We also have VIBE, which is our visually impaired blind empowerment program. Those dates have already been set. If you're interested in that, it's the same thing as, they're learning orientation, mobility. They're learning how to get around being blind. Project Search, which is another one of my favorites, unpaid internship program for high school students or young adults in career techs. It's intended for those who are most significant disabilities. They do 3 rotations up to 10 weeks at a host site, usually in a hospital or hotel. The end result, guess what? Competitive employment, which is our goal. And there's a contract with OU for state coordinator support in that. We currently have 8 sites. We're going to be having a 9th one in Tulsa, January 2022, just around the corner. So it's super exciting times. That's all that I can think of just to throw it at you. I'm available for questions, or anytime you would like to discuss or talk, let me know.
We are thrilled with your presentation, and everything that Renee just mentioned is in that folder, in that PowerPoint folder. I'm going to send the link for that now. We have just a couple of seconds left, and I want to have a chance to give you all a look-see at what's coming up. In addition to all this great stuff, we are going to be doing some things with the unified sports, and I'm just thrilled about it. So I'm going to share that with you before we go, and we should be done just about right on time.
Let's do it.
I am. As I say thank you to everyone for participating this evening, I want you all to know that we are able to do all of these great things this year. We have the resources in that folder that I've shared with everyone. If you didn't get the link, follow up with me. I want you to please encourage our families, our students, our parents to go through the folder, and let's please encourage them to get involved with VR. There are some services that they have to have gone through VR in order to access. We want to start adding our 14-year-olds to our referrals for pre-ex. I'm thrilled that I was able to hear that. With that said, I again want to thank you for joining our village experience. It takes a village to transition a child, and we're going to be excellent at it. Thank you. Have the best rest of your Thursday evening.